Oops, let me go back to Facebook.
Yes, meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
So you see it now because I see it. Okay, I see it's up now on Facebook. And what I'd like to do is, my name is Glenda Carroll, and I'm with the Mystery Writers of America, Northern California, with Facebook Saturday Live. That's what you're watching. And this is a wonderful series where authors present short, focused talks on the craft of crime. I don't know whether you've had a chance to see some of the other videos, but they're on this Facebook page, so you can scroll down and see all the ones that you've missed. Anyway, it's been a great series, great presenters, and today is really a subject matter that I'm interested in. We're going to have Steve Hockensmith tell us everything we need to know about writing short mystery fiction. Now, if you have any questions, put them in the comments section. And at the end of this session, when he's finished, I will get all those questions and we can ask Steve together because I even have some. So Steve, I'm going to disappear from the screen, and you need me, just say, Glenda, I'm here. And so thanks for being here, and you are on, Steve.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for this conversation about short mystery fiction. If you don't know anything about me, I am, a novelist who has, 15, 16, 17 books out there in the world, but also a short story writer. And I was just counting them up this morning, and I've sold 45 short stories to various magazines and anthologies, which sounds pretty good, except when I realized like that was over the course of the last 20 years. So doing the math is like, that could have been more stories, but busy. We've all got other things to do. So anyway, I have a little experience in the field, and I want to share that with everybody today. I've put together a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to switch over to in just a second, and I'm going to be going through it kind of fast because this is supposed to be a short, focused talk, which is very apropos for talking about short fiction. But I have a lot of slides, so I'm going to have to be going kind of on the fast side. But don't worry, I'll be sticking around at the end for questions. We'll also be posting at the end URLs for some of the links that I am advocating today. And there will also be some freebies that we will be talking about at the end. So you might want to stick around to the end because free stuff. So now let the sharing begin, and I will jump into, at the wrong point in my PowerPoint presentation, but here, this is the right point now. The short mystery market. And we're going to be answering 3 questions about that today. Why, how, and where? Why write short stories if you're trying to break into the mystery field? How do you write them? And where can you sell them? So now I'm going to try to slow down my pace a little bit. So first up, why? Why write crime fiction short stories? I happen to think that it is a great way to develop your craft. It is, in fact, how I got started. Before I even tried to write a novel, I was writing short stories. It seemed to me that that was a better way to learn what I was doing, a more efficient way, because instead of spending a year or so working on a novel that may or may not work, you can spend a few weeks on a story and then know when it's done, what you've got and what worked and what didn't and what you need to develop. Because you're doing more different kinds of projects like that, instead of focusing on one huge project, it gives you the freedom to experiment, to try different styles, different voices, different subgenres. And I think that that can be really, really helpful. In fact, it was very helpful to me in the beginning because I started off trying to write science fiction because I had grown up reading a lot of science fiction and I thought I would be good at writing it. It turns out I was not. And I learned that by trying to write it. And then when I tried to write short mystery fiction, it turned out, I could write it. So that was a great thing to learn. And I learned that I was good at writing it, not just from my own opinion or the opinions of my friends, but because I started to sell stories. that is the rubric for success that was very helpful to me to say, I guess I'm on the right path here because when I write these stories, the editors who are seeing a lot of stories are buying mine. So I think I'm doing something right. So those sales were telling me, keep going, keep trying. This is working well for you. And as I made those sales, people started to see my stories, get to know me. I got to know other people working in the field, and that's paid off over the years uh, in a lot of different ways, some of which I'll talk about later. Um, but it really broke open everything for me because my first agent found me through a short story in Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine. She approached me and eventually ended up representing my first book, selling my first book, and that just got everything started. So thank you, short stories. And of course, the reason that we're all, of course, in this game of writing is the big bucks. And of course, that there is a little irony going on here. We're not in it for the big bucks, and if we are, we're in the wrong place. But there are bucks to be had from short stories. The main magazines in the field, and we're going to talk about those more in a little bit. They still pay 5 to 8 cents a word, which when you throw in the other sorts of foreign rights and whatnot that they typically buy, you can be making anywhere from $400 to $900 for a short story, which is pretty darn good. So now you might be asking yourself, well, okay, now I want to do it, but how do I do this? And I'll be dropping in words of wisdom from various other writers and editors in the field, most of whom, all of whom know more than I do. So that's why I reached out to them. One of whom is award-winning short story author and freelance editor Barb Goffman. And Barb says, remember
Excuse
your
me,
stories about
Steve, I have a question for you. I just want to make sure that we're seeing the right thing on the screen. What I just have is a white screen and it's just a title, Short Story Market. I didn't know if your PowerPoint is already up or not.
Oh, I've been going through the whole thing. So
Yeah,
I haven't
seen the PowerPoint come up.
Well, that is really disappointing. So yes, I've been doing it this whole time. So let me try again. Why did it not work, I wonder? Um,
It's still just the screen, the white screen.
oh, how terribly disappointing. Okay. Sorry, everybody, if you were terribly bored as I was just chit-chatting away.
Oh, there you go. We're here. It says, what I've got is, how do you write crime short? Okay, why write crime?
Okay.
Question. You've got all right, the short mystery market. Okay, I will go disappear. You're on.
Thank you for breaking in. I can't believe that. So yes, 3 questions, how, why, where. I will just rush through everything you missed because all I was doing was just illustrating all of these wonderful things I've been talking about. And now we get to the words of wisdom with Barb Goffman. So boy, thank you for everybody who stuck in there for 5 minutes of me blabbing over a white screen. Barb tells us, remember your stories about one thing, one tight tale, so you have to focus, no meandering, no subplots or romance unless it's integral to the story. Get into the plot as late as you can and out as early as you can. So keep it tight is what Barb advises. More advice from me is look before you lead. Read. If you want to write and sell crime short stories, for goodness sake, read some. And that is also the advice of Mr. Robert Lopresti, who is a widely published short story author and the president of the Short Mystery Fiction Society, which we'll be talking more about a little bit later. And he says, read what you want to write, read the classics in the field to see what you are building on, read the current stuff to see what the market wants. And along those lines, we also have a little input, more words of wisdom from Janet Hutchings, who's the editor of Ellery Queen. And she says, our policy is to include every subgenre of mystery and suspense in each issue. Although we are often spoken of as the magazine of the traditional detective story, that impression probably derives more from the novels and stories written by the Ellery Queen writing team than from the familiarity with our magazine, which just goes to show the importance of reading the magazine. You'll see that it's, you might think Ellery Queen is all about detectives and is filled with whodunits. That's not true. It's, there are some of those stories in there, but it's actually very diverse. And Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine also publishes a very diverse range of crime stories. So when it comes to how do you write these short stories, we're saying keep it short. We're saying read, sample what's out there, and I say outline or don't. I have always been a meticulous, anal, one could say, outliner. It's always been an important part of my process, and in fact, I usually don't write a word until I have every beat of the story mapped out. Um, that's what works for me. I know that that is not what works for everybody, and in fact, some very talented and successful writers don't outline. But the thing you have to do is figure out what works for you, and that goes back to the point of writing, of doing it. Um, so, it being a crime short story, of course, you will want to include a crime. Pretty much a must-have in crime fiction. But there are various kinds of crime short stories. You've got your classic whodunit. You've got your how they're gonna get out of it or what the heck's going on. Suspense things where something creepy, mysterious, scary is going on. You want to keep reading to find out how the protagonists are gonna get out of it. You can also have a bite or bit kind of story. That's a story where you've got a bad person who's doing a bad thing, and it looks like they're going to get away with it, but then they do not through some sort of reversal. Or you can have a bite or bite story where there's somebody who's trying to get away with it, and they do. Maybe we're rooting for the person, even. Who knows? The classic example of that kind of story is Lamb to the Slaughter by Roald Dahl, which is, I think, pretty easy to find if you just Google. I think it's out there. It's in a lot of collections as well. And I highly recommend that you look at it because it's nice and short, real tight, funny, and has a great twist. So that's a classic. Another kind of short story would be a noir story where it's usually very gritty, dealing with, maybe not the most admirable individuals, and it usually has a downbeat ending of some sort. And there are markets that just keep that up. And in fact, Ellery Queen and Alfred Hitchcock published some stories like that. Now you'll see I've got literary down there at the end, crossed out. That is another kind of short story, another kind of crime story. If you read the Best American Short Story collections that are coming out every year, and I suggest that everybody does, about 50% or more of those are actually what I would consider literary stories. They come out of literary journals, and they're stories where character is more important than story. In fact, story might not be really discernibly important at all. That is a different kind of story that sells to a different kind of market than the one I'm really talking about today. So you might want to keep that in mind. But thinking about literary, Janet says many of our readers subscribe not because they are mystery buffs, but because we are one of the few magazines remaining that publishes quality short stories. We are publishing for a dual audience, the general reader and the mystery fan, and that means the writers have got to satisfy all of the requirements of good fiction writing, as well as providing the clever twist or the well-constructed puzzle one associates with the mystery story. And part of what Janet is referring to there is that once upon a time, there was a huge market for fiction, general fiction, in magazines in the United States. There were dozens of magazines that were extremely popular coming out every week, filled with short stories of all different kinds. And that is just not the case anymore. But there are obviously still people who love short stories and are looking for them. And there are only a few nationally distributed, professionally produced magazines that people can pick up. And Ellery Queen is going to be one of those. And so even though I was saying this isn't literary, but of course it has to be polished, it has to be professional, it has to be the best prose possible. It also has to be short. It is a short story after all. I think that what editors typically love is something in the 4,000, 5,000-ish zone, which is actually pretty darn short. I think you can push that as up to the sort of 8,000-ish level. But once you go over that level, I think you're going to find it tougher because space is limited, and you're competing against a lot of other writers and a lot of other stories that are trying to get into a set amount of space. So once you get over 10,000, it's dicey. Once you get over 15,000, I think it's beyond dicey because there you've basically got a novella, a short novel, and that's going to be very hard to sell. So as you're trying to keep it short, you might want to keep in mind the wisdom of Mr. Art Taylor, a multi-award winning short story writer. Um, and he says, think efficiency as you write and revise. How can each element of your story do more than one thing? For example, how can a line of dialogue both reveal character and push plot ahead? Or how can settings set scenes, build mood, define character, etc.? How can a single detail suggest much, much more about something larger being described? So yeah, use that limited amount of real estate you've got to tell your story. Now, in addition to keeping it short, you might want to think about leaving out swearing, sex, and gore. You can leave them in if you want to have a slightly harder time telling your story. Ellery Queen and Alfred Hitchcock, they do publish some mild profanity. They do publish some dark material. So do the other mystery publications out there. But if you want to be tossing around F-bombs aplenty, you're just making things harder for yourself. Do it if you want, and some markets won't care. But the bigger markets it'll just be a little tougher to get in that door. What'll make it very tough to get in the door is if you do any harm to this fellow. Make sure you can say no animals were harmed in the making of this story. Mystery writers will tell you again and again, you can do pretty much whatever you want to a human being in one of your stories, but for God's sake, don't hurt a dog or a cat or anything else with fur or feathers or even fins. Leave the animals out of the mayhem, please. To sum up, the how-to advice from me, my philosophy is keep writing bad stuff until you're writing good stuff, which is not the most wise thing in the world, but it is what worked for me. If you want to hear it from someone more wise than me, take it from Admiral James T. Kirk, who told us all we learn by doing. And I actually think he was entirely right about that. That's what I advise. If you want more nuanced advice than what came from me or Jim Kirk, I would suggest you go to the new handbook from Mystery Writers of America, How to Write a Mystery. There's a chapter in there called The Short Story by the aforementioned Art Taylor, available wherever fine books are sold. And also one copy will be given away at the end of this presentation. And if you really also want to do a deep internet dive, I would advise going to the Sleuthsayers website where Rob Lopresti, the aforementioned Rob Lopresti, has put up an exhaustive exploration of all the different facets of writing short mystery fiction. And it can be found at that URL, which we will be posting in the chat at the end of the presentation. So that was the why and the how, and now we're going to get to the where. I think there are pretty much 4 places you can turn if you want to be breaking into short mystery fiction: magazines, anthologies, webzines, and kind of sort of maybe Amazon. And we will get to that. But first up, the magazines. We've already talked a little bit about Alfred Hitchcock's Mystery Magazine and Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine. These are still pretty much the biggies, no offense to the other wonderful publications that are out there, but they've been around for decades. They're found in many bookstores across the great land of ours, and they are the most high profile and best paying of the short story markets that are still around. Linda Landrigan, editor of Alfred Hitchcock, gives this advice if you're trying to break in there. She says to avoid rote writing. PI stories frequently fall victim to cliches, sadly. She says to avoid obviousness. So often I can tell right up front who did it and how the story is going to unfold. I keep reading because the mystery to me is whether the story is eventually going to defy my expectations. Often it doesn't, but it's fun when that happens. She also says to avoid writing a mini novel. Short stories aren't short novels. This is different. I think short stories are closer to poems than novels, even when series characters from novels are pulled into a short story. Now, one way that I had success early on in my endeavors writing short stories for Alfred Hitchcock and Ellery Queen was to look at their theme issues. They did these way back in the day, and they still do them today. Every year, Alfred Hitchcock will do a Christmas issue, and that means they will be looking for Christmas stories. And I've written a lot of Christmas stories for both Alfred Hitchcock and Ellery Queen over the years. So I feel like, well, that just gives you just a little bit more of an edge, because you know that the editor will be looking for that particular kind of story. If you can do a story that's good and fits neatly into a particular issue, that's going to do nothing but help you. Ellery Queen also does a Sherlock Holmes tribute issue every year, and that's another one that you can try to write for. They do accept and publish occasionally pastiches, Sherlock Holmes stories written in the style of Arthur Conan Doyle. But you can also play with the form. You can take the idea of Sherlock Holmes and give it a new twist. That's what I tend to do, rather than write a straight pastiche. But either approach can get you a sale to Ellery Queen. Now, I don't mean to overlook the other great mystery magazines that are out there, like Black Cat Mystery Magazine, Sherlock Holmes Mystery Magazine, The Strand, and Mystery Weekly Magazine. So they are all out there publishing in print form and paying, although not as much as Ellery Queen and Alfred Hitchcock, but they are paying. And we will, again, be posting a URL at the end of the presentation that will show you where to go to get submission information for all of these guys. And it turns out that even though I said a while ago there were all these magazines once upon a time that published general fiction, and those have all kind of gone away, you can find non-niche mystery magazines that do publish mystery stories from time to time. The Saturday Evening Post is one. The short story writer John Floyd has had a lot of success selling mystery stories to them. He also sells regularly to Woman's World, which publishes short, and I mean short, like 500-word mystery stories on a regular basis and pay pretty well. So those would be other avenues you might want to explore that maybe you hadn't thought of. More words of wisdom from Linda Landrigan. Read the story aloud or have it read to you before submitting. A lot of infelicities become more apparent when the story is heard. I think I read at the sound of speech, so how a story sounds to me as I first read it out is very important. And I am the exact same way. I read very slowly. I hear the words in my head. I also write very slowly as a result, but I think that does nothing but help the language that ends up on the page. And I would certainly advise anybody to give it a shot. Read your story out loud. See if it sounds as good out loud as it did in your head. So that's magazines, but how about these anthologies? Well, of course, Mystery Writers of America puts out anthologies on a regular basis that are jam-packed with great stories from great writers. These are usually edited by a known writer who will invite a number of fellow MWA members to submit, but then the submission is opened up to the general readership, the general membership. So as long as you are an MWA member, you can have a chance to submit stories to one of these anthologies, and they're doing at least one or two all the time. Those are just two of the most recent ones right there. In addition to the MWA anthologies that are coming out all the time, there are other anthologies that are being put together regularly. And some of these you will find in the submission guide that we will be posting at the end of the presentation. I have found lately that I see a lot of notices about anthologies open for submissions and looking for new writers on Twitter, sometimes on Facebook, but mostly on Twitter. So I would advise that you be following short story writers on Twitter, following other writers, following editors, and keeping your eyes open for this sort of thing, because it seems like that's one of the ways they're putting the call out for new stories with interesting themes like asinine assassins. So there's your anthology. Now, how about these webzines? Well, there's a lot of them, and again, these will be covered in the list that will be posted at the end. These are a few that have caught my eye as ones to maybe recommend. The first three, All Due Respect, Tough, and Serial, because they pay. Not a ton, but they pay. And so if that's a good rubric for you for success, you might want to think about taking a look at them and their submission guidelines. Shotgun Honey is in there because it's pretty well known in the noir community. Um, they don't pay, but a really interesting thing about them is that they specialize in shorts, in flash fiction, stories that are, I think, under 500 words, definitely under 1,000, like very short stories. Um, so that's a great way to experiment, trying something very short like that. And again, they are well known within that community, so it's a great way to reach new people. Then we got our Amazon. Now, Amazon, you can put up any old thing you want pretty much. So you could try short stories through the Kindle Direct Publishing program. I don't think that that would be a great way to go for a few reasons. One is if you don't have a built-in audience already, it's going to be very hard to market them, very hard to sell them. Also, readers on Amazon tend to seem to be, I don't want to say they're spoiled. I love them. I am one. But they are used to buying fiction very cheaply. And I often see when I look at how readers are reacting to individual short stories for sale on Amazon, there are a lot of anger. People just are mad that they paid 99 cents for something that wasn't a novel. They really expect a lot for not a lot of money. So it's a challenging way to go, but I do know writers who've done it, and I think have had some success with it. There is a new program through Kindle that involves serialized fiction, not exactly short stories, but storytelling in short chapters. That Villa, I guess. I've never heard anyone say it out loud, so I'm guessing there how to pronounce it. But it's very new, and I know some writers who've jumped into it, and so that's another thing to think about. Now, another way to go in terms of selling stories, I'm sorry, not selling stories, but sharing stories online would be Wattpad. And this is something that I don't have much experience with, except that I know it exists. Very active community for people trying to hone their craft as fiction writers and even build communities of readers. But it's all, you don't sell it, it's all free, it's all a community. And you're posting stuff and people are commenting on it. And to me, it feels like the Wild West. But it's something you might want to try. It's one way to get feedback if you don't have a writers group. Maybe you would want to give Wattpad a try and see if you can find. I know that writers in the romance community, the fantasy community, the science fiction community have had some success building fan bases and connections on Wattpad. I've not really heard so much of mystery or crime writers doing that, but that's not to say it hasn't happened. Now we come to that URL I kept talking about, and I am starting to lose my voice, I noticed. The Short Mystery Fiction Society is something that if you're really serious about trying to sell crime fiction, I highly advise that you Google them, join them. Well, actually, you don't have to Google them because you can see their main website right there, shortmystery.blogspot.com. If you go there, you can figure out how to join. It is free. And there's a great online forum that they run talking about, just all the different sort of new happenings in the short mystery fiction world, including a lot of these anthologies. As the invitations go out, they'll give you a heads up. If you go to the longer URL, shortmystery.blogspot.com/p/markets.html, they have a very complete listing of not just the print magazines, but the webzines and various anthologies that are all open to short story submissions right now. So you can get started right away. Another thing you can get going on right away is downloading free stuff. If you have been so wonderful as to sit with me through this through this half hour of me blathering away, you can go to Amazon and you can download one of my or both of my short story collections for free. If you just want to take a look at one writer's representative sampling of different kinds of stories that have sold. The stories that are in these two collections appeared almost entirely in Alfred Hitchcock and Ellery Queen mystery magazines. There are a few that were in various anthologies as well. So you can see it's over the course of the last several years, but I think it all still holds as the kinds of stories that would still sell today. And if you want even more free stuff, you can take a shot at a free copy of an ARC. Sorry, all I've got left is an advanced reader copy, but I've got it, and I'm willing to give it away of How to Write a Mystery. And you can throw your hat in the ring by sending an email to realcrime@yahoo.com. That's my email address. And just tell me who wrote the first detective story. And I'll let you in on something. I don't even care if you have the right answer or not. It's just a way to get people to tell me if they're interested or not. And then I will, at random, pick somebody who will get a free copy of the book. Also, if you want to send me something else at realcrime@yahoo.com, I am open to your questions. If we don't get to them all today, I realize I just did a lot of talking and we're trying to keep these short, so we might not have time to get to a bunch in the Facebook Live chat. If we don't get to your question, please shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. So now I'm going to stop sharing, and I think hopefully I've reappeared here, and I am now available for any questions if Glenda wants to let me know what people are saying.
Okay, sure. That was great. All right, we have 3 or 4 questions at this point. I'm sure we'll get some more. One of the first slides that you showed, I can't remember who you were quoting, but she said, get in late, get out early. I don't know what that means. Can you explain that?
Yeah, that was Barb Goffman. And what she meant was, you think of your story as, as something that really happened. And so you could say like, well, I'm going to tell the story of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. And I'm going to begin with the birth of General Custer. I'm like, no. Let's cut out the birth. Well, then you could say, well, I'll start with Custer at West Point. It's like, no. You're telling the story of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. It's like, okay. I'll start with Custer in the Civil War. Like, no. Get to Custer at the Little Bighorn. He shows up there. What's gonna happen? He's there. There's a saying that I will garble, in media res. It's Latin, and I'm bad with such things, but it means starting in the middle of a story. You don't always have to like drop right into the middle of the action, but it's good to start as close to the beginning of the action of the story as possible. So that's what she meant by that. Like, what's the critical? What can you leave out, and how can you cut to the chase?
Okay. There's another question here from Claire Johnson. She said, I've seen a real shift in writing contests away from novels to short stories. Do you agree with that assessment?
I wish I could or could not. I'm sure she's right, so I'll agree. I don't know, because I don't keep my eye on writing contests. So I guess I would say that's a great tip, actually, coming from Claire. Okay, guys, writing contests. I hadn't even thought about that. It's not something I had done. Check that out. Look into it. If there's a lot of short fiction writing contests going on out there, that would be again a great way to hone the craft and get that rubric for success. Find out if you're doing something that the judges, the editors, are going to be interested in.
Okay, here's another question from Sean Pollock. I've heard you should always have several stories circulating in the market. Do you recommend submitting one story to one magazine, another to another magazine, and so on? Or does it make more sense to always start at the top, i.e. Alfred Hitchcock? And hold on, let me check. And working down the same list?
That's a great question. I don't think that Sean is asking about simultaneous submissions there. But I would say like, yeah, no, don't do simultaneous submissions. So yeah, like I would advise beginning with your preferred market, right? Where's begin with the biggie. Wherever you really want to go, that's where you go. And then yeah, working down the list from there. I would advise like keep taking, not churning out the stories, but keep producing the stories. In terms of whether you should submit more than one story to one market at the same time, I think different editors feel differently about that than others, and it's hard to know which ones are fine with it and which ones aren't so fine with it. I will say that in terms of response times, some are quicker than others, and in fact, some are quite slow. And so it would be hard to really wait sometimes, because some of the markets don't reply for like 9 months. And if you really feel like you've got another story that is just right for them, I would say go ahead and send it in. Just don't flood a particular market with submissions, and you definitely should look through always before submitting. Every publication will have contributor guidelines, and you should always read those pretty carefully, because somewhere in there might be, I've seen it, a note saying, do not send us more than one story at a time. And others, if they don't say it, you can assume they don't care.
Okay. This is from Marjorie Tucker. Thanks so much, Steve. Besides working your butt off at your craft, how do you know if you actually have talent?
Wow, that's a great question. And I guess it again goes back to that rubric. Not that it should all be about money or external validation, but um, if you sell stories to Alfred Hitchcock, Eller Queen, or these other publications, you've got talent. People are buying your stories. That's not to say that if you're not selling, you don't have talent. It means that you might be very, very talented, but you're not producing the material that these markets want. And so there, it becomes tougher then to discern. And gosh, then you just have to rely on your gut more, and I guess what your writing group tells you. But again, that's why I find that selling the stuff is a really helpful guideline, because I sometimes I get to the end of a story and I don't know if it works or not. And in fact, I'll say that some of my favorite stories that I have written over the years, I couldn't sell anywhere. I've got like 2 or 3 like that I love. I think they're great, and nobody liked them. So, that doesn't mean that I'm a bad writer. It means that those stories were not sellable.
Okay. This is from Julie Casserly. You mentioned that stories over 15,000 words, but aren't full novels, are very hard to market to the magazines. Is there a home for them, or are they kind of orphans as far as publication is concerned?
Yeah, they are close to orphans. You know, a novella. Oh boy, Ellery Queen and Alfred Hitchcock will publish things that are novella length once upon a time. I know that in different genres like fantasy and science fiction, the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, they will publish novellas, novelettes on a regular basis, or at least they used to. Ditto, Asimov, and Analog. Uh, but yeah, it's pretty hard in the mystery world. Where you can find a home for these orphans um, would be sometimes through self-publishing. Or I know that the publisher Down and Out Books publishes things that are, I think, longer than novellas, but not full novel length. I think they're flexible, more flexible than most about the length of things. And certainly there's ways to also bundle novellas together, so you get to something that's closer to full book length. But those are tough sells, because then you've got a book, and that's a whole other thing. Is that selling an individual collection of stories, even if they're novellas, to a traditional publisher is next to impossible. There's just not enough of a market for it. There are a few out there, specialty publishers, but that's a whole other conversation.
I have a question, actually. When you went from writing novel length stories down to short stories, or maybe it was the other way, I'm not quite sure which way you went. What did you find the most difficult?
Yeah, I started in short stories and then went to novels, and then have just switched back and forth, continuously throughout the years, depending on what I was wanting to do at the moment. And I guess the thing that was challenging for me is that, like I said early in the presentation, I'm an outliner. And so when you're outlining something that you want to be a 5,000 word story, and for me, whatever I want to be a 5,000 word end up being an 8,000 or 9,000 word story. Inevitably, I can never keep it super tight. That takes a certain amount of time and concentration, and it's hard work. It's really, you have to be super focused. When you do that kind of thing, planning for a novel, it's very daunting, and it's not a lot of fun, to be honest. But it's just my process. So, and it's what's always worked for me. So I guess I could say that going from short stories to novels was tough, in that the amount of pre-planning that went into it just increased exponentially, and then just the stick-to-itiveness that you need for a novel. You need it for any writing project. You need to keep coming back to the keyboard to get it done, and that can be a challenge sometimes. But boy, to finish a novel, it can be a long, hard slog.
Yeah. I want to talk about just one comment that we got. This is from Claire. And it's in the comments section. So all of you who are watching this, if you scroll down, it's all about writing contests. And I'm just going to read out the URL, but go take a look if you're interested. It's blog/reedsy, reedsy.com/writing-contest/. So, for those of you who are interested in writing contests, they're there. And I am going to reappear, hopefully. Yeah, there I am. And I don't think we have any more questions. As soon as we get off, I'll put all the URLs that Steve mentioned in the comment section. And the only reason you don't have them now is I screwed up. So sorry, but they'll be there. And so, Steve, I just want to thank you. This was really interesting. And I think about it for myself of like, well, how do I do this? How do I go from the 85,000 word novel to a short story? And you kind of gave me some guidelines, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today. And for those of you who've been watching these series, the video of this particular presentation will be up within minutes after we finish. So thank you very much, Steve. And check back in with us next month for our next speaker.
Thank you, Glenda. Thank you, everybody.